I scoot closer?
Good morning, guys. How are you doing?
Doing good. How are you?
Good. You can scoot closer if you'd like. And get in the frame.
Yeah.
So how's your guys' week been?
Been pretty good.
Yeah. Good. So what's on our agenda today? What do you guys want to go over?
I mean, this last week we definitely tried to implement what we discussed last week, so I feel like we could start there.
Okay.
No.
Yeah, so last week we kind of went over some tips for positive communication. You guys, we've kind of been working on your guys' relationship. You're both roommates. You guys are living together, and there's been some complications with having positive communication and productive communication, and so that's something that we've been trying to go through and work on. So last week we talked about 4 different strategies. We talked about reflecting feelings, the circle of control, using I statements, and then asking questions or clarifying. So can you guys tell me a little bit about how that went?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we both are trying to put in effort, but there's still that disconnect and that disconnect just in the sense that, I mean, we're both trying, but we still both don't see each other's point of view. So now instead of, communicating, we'll kind of just go off and do whatever we need to without discussing it and then just like looming in our feelings.
Right. And you talk about looming in your feelings. What does that look like for you?
I mean, I know for me, I give her the silent treatment when I'm frustrated with her.
The silent treatment.
So, yeah.
And Kaylee, tell me about how that feels like, what that feels like for you.
I mean, honestly, it doesn't bother me too much. I just go about my day, do whatever.
So I'm hearing that.
I'm used to it.
So you're kind of used to it. It doesn't bother you as much.
Yeah.
And how do you handle like frustration when you're upset or you're frustrated? So Sarah talked about giving you the silent treatment, but what about you? What do you do?
I think I just go and do my own thing. I mean, I'm not necessarily giving like the silent treatment, but just go in my room and try to just distract myself and do my own thing.
Yeah, distract yourself. And have there been any times that you guys have communicated really well together?
I mean, I'd say we're working on it. I mean, it's just one of those things where we both have been kind of like stuck in our ways, that we're trying our hardest, but it doesn't necessarily always happen.
Right.
And it doesn't necessarily always happen smoothly just because it's one of those things where you have to it's a buildable moment.
Mm-hmm.
So we definitely have been trying. I can't think of like one specific time where either of us communicated like super well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you said that it's kind of like the buildable moments. So this past week, what was one of like the tips that we talked about that you guys can remember trying? So there was the reflecting feelings, circle of control, I statements, or asking questions or clarifying.
I like the I statements because I feel like it is, you really get to explain how you're feeling and what the other person is doing, how that makes you feel, and how you perceive what they're doing without placing any of the blame on them.
Right. Yeah. And I think that that's a big thing is because when you are in a conflict with somebody and you're trying to communicate, a lot of the times if you're placing blame on another person, it kind of could shut them down or could frustrate them. And so really being aware of using those I statements and saying I feel like this, or I feel this way when you did this. Really taking ownership of like how you're feeling and making sure to not place blame on yourself or on the other person. So I think that's a really good one. And so that was something beneficial for you guys?
That's the one I liked the best, I think.
I mean, I definitely like the I statements just because I know when she was utilizing that, it made me feel better in the sense that, like you said, she wasn't necessarily placing blame on me. She was just stating how things that I had done made her feel.
Right.
So I would agree. I really liked that one.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Okay. So let's try to, because it was something that you guys did last week. So can we do like a little bit of role playing, and we can use like the I feel statements, just how you guys used them last week. So last week we talked about using it in regards to cleaning. So do you guys have any, can you start with kind of like the conversation that you had last week using the I feel statements?
Yeah, I'm trying to think what
Yeah.
we used it.
Oh, it was with the K-cups, because remember I like to leave the K-cups out, and
Oh yeah,
you got
of
really
the coffee.
Yes, the K-cups for the coffee.
Yes. So when the little coffee cups stack up, it annoys me, and it just, I feel like, makes everything dirty. And so I told her, like, I feel like when these are left out, that it just makes the house feel cluttered and dirty, and I feel like, to me, the trash can is a couple steps away, so it wouldn't be a big deal to just walk over to the trash can. And so I said that, and there was a couple times that she like threw them away and listened, and so I
Right.
felt like she had listened some of the times, but then some of the times there was a couple days where she left them out, and it was just kind of like, I didn't think that she was listening to me or to your advice.
Right. Yeah, and so I like how in the beginning of what you were saying, you really said like, I feel like when these K-cups are out, it makes the house feel cluttered. Not placing blame on her, not saying like, when you leave these out, blah, 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 blah. It's saying, I feel like, when these are left out, it makes the house feel cluttered. Does that feel like more productive than kind of like placing blame on her?
Yeah.
And, right.
Yeah.
And Sarah, what about for you?
Yeah, I mean, I appreciated when she told me that, because then, one, I wasn't just on the defense because I didn't feel like she was blaming me. She was just telling me how she viewed the situations, which I had no idea that that's how she felt with them, and how she felt like the house was cluttered and being dirty. So it kind of just opened my eyes to being more sensitive to like how she felt about the situation, rather than just being like, oh, it's no big deal.
Right. So from that, you're kind of getting at like a little bit of a better understanding of what she's saying and where she's coming from.
Yeah.
Yeah. So can you try to use an I statement with Kaylee, kind of like saying what you felt like in what, in after.
During like the K-cup moments?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I felt like it wasn't cluttered, or that it wasn't messy. But I can understand that that's how you felt.
Yeah. Good job also like just reflecting her feelings. And that's something that we also talked about was, the reflecting feelings. So you said, I felt like this, and this, but I can understand that you felt like this. And that's reflecting her feelings. That's kind of like, understanding and validating, her feelings and her emotions. So I think that that's a really big piece too, and I'm glad that you were able to do that and work on that. Can you tell me a little bit about how that feels, hearing Sarah say that she understands your point of view?
Yeah, it makes me feel good, because it makes me feel like she listened to me, and even though, she may not understand how I feel, she understands that I feel that way.
Yeah, so she understands that you feel that way. Yeah. And Sarah, what about for you? How does that feel, like hearing Kaylee say that?
I mean, it makes me feel better, just because then now I know that it's something that I can work on, or that I need to work on, so that she can feel better, and that she can feel safe, or not safe, but just feel good in her home.
Right. Yeah, because that's, something that both of you, I'm sure, want, is just to feel good and to feel safe in your home, and to be able to resolve issues or conflicts that come up. So how is that kind of like role play for you guys? How is using the I statements?
I mean, I think it's one of those ones where at first it kind of takes a little time, just because we haven't communicated the healthiest in the past. Like, we've built up this like just go-to mechanism of like just unhealthy communication. So I think just one, it's that kind of just like taking a moment to like calm yourself before talking and before communicating. That way we can remember to use those like I statements and not place blame.
Yeah. And you mentioned you haven't had, healthy communication in the past. And so it's a little bit of an adjustment, working on these things right now. Can you guys share with me a little bit about like some of the unhealthy communication patterns that happened or were present?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I know it was just one of those ones where at first I just wouldn't communicate, and then I'd get so frustrated that it would all just kind of like word vomit out of my mouth, and I would say mean things, and then I would raise my voice, which then that obviously like frustrated her, so then she would get angry. But yeah.
So you were saying that you kind of had a tendency to raise your voice or word vomit, you said?
Yes.
And then Kaylee, is there anything that you've noticed that is like an unhealthy communication pattern for you?
I'd say just not bringing up issues when I see the issue. I tend to just get annoyed and then like walk away or move on instead of bringing up the issue when I see it.
Right. And so then, sometimes having those issues, like pushing down those issues, they can kind of pile on top of each other until
make a bigger issue.
It all explodes, and like Sarah said, then you can word vomit. Yeah. So compared to kind of like where you guys started out, like in the beginning of being roommates, how would you compare that to now?
I think it's getting better for sure. I think we've made a lot of progress. There's still a lot of like things we need to work on, but I think
growth potential.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that word, growth potential. Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit about what that would mean or what that would look like for you guys?
I think just implementing like the rest of your strategies into our everyday lives, and just really making sure we use those in times of conflict, and instead of like reverting back to our old ways of dealing with conflict.
Right. Yeah. So Sarah, when you were talking, you had mentioned like taking like when you get frustrated, upset, like being able to take a moment to like calm down, and then use these strategies, and that was something that you just reflected to, Kaylee, like being able to like take a minute to calm down, and instead of going towards those unhealthy communication patterns, remembering what we've talked about, remembering like the reflecting feelings, the circle of control, the I statements, the asking questions and clarifying, and those are all really those are new. We've talked about them for a few weeks, but they're pretty new to you, and so it's definitely understandable. It's gonna just be a process and take time. So we kind of touched on reflecting feelings. We implemented that in with kind of like the I statements that we were talking about. But how has reflecting feelings been going for you guys? Has that been something easy or hard this past week?
I wouldn't say it was easy. I wouldn't say it was hard. I would say more of this, it's a new concept in the sense that it feels foreign just because we're not used to doing it. But I wouldn't say it's easy or hard. It's more of just one of those kind of new things, that we're navigating.
Right. So I'm gonna take a minute to do a role play, and I'm just gonna reflect what you were saying, Sarah, so that you guys can see, just another example of how somebody may reflect feelings. So Sarah, you were saying that, doing these different interventions, it's not easy, it's not hard, it's just, it feels a little bit foreign, it feels a little bit different just because it's something new. So it's not like good or bad, but it's just something new that you guys are trying and working on and working towards. Yeah. So Sarah, did you feel like I reflected what you were saying pretty well?
Yeah, I definitely do, and I definitely like how you used a lot of the same language that I used to begin with, just because it really made me feel like you actually heard what I was saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what about for you, Kaylee? Did you see kind of like how I was able to reflect what she was saying?
Yeah, I think that was really good. I think, yeah, like she was saying, it makes her feel, when you repeat or reflect your feelings, it makes her feel heard. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Thought you did good.
And so was reflecting feelings, was that something that you were able to try out?
Yeah, I think I tried it like once or twice, and I think, like she was saying, it's different. 'Cause I don't like to talk about my feelings a lot, but yeah, can work on it.
So you said you don't really like to talk about your feelings that much?
Mhm.
Yeah. Has that always been something for you?
Yeah, I would say it's been, I've haven't liked it for most of my life.
Okay. So is it kind of something more challenging now that you are kind of having to talk more about feelings and emotions and that sort of thing?
Yeah, I would say it's definitely different, and it's a little bit challenging just because just can make me a little bit uncomfortable, but willing to do it to make our situation better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you're willing to feel more uncomfortable to try to make things look better.
Mhm.
Yeah. And Sarah, how does that feel for you, hearing her say, like she's willing to feel uncomfortable to, help things be better?
I mean, it's definitely something that I relate to, just because I also don't necessarily share or express my feelings very often.
Mm-hmm.
For very much the same reasons, as it makes me uncomfortable. So it really resonates with me, just knowing that she feels the same way.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can both be vulnerable in that moment when we do share our feelings.
Right. So that's interesting that you guys both don't really like to talk about your feelings. So this is probably like, doing these different things, these different techniques is probably something that's kind of like you were both saying, like uncomfortable, but you both see the benefit in it. Is that right?
Yeah. I think it's kind of hard, but it'll be worth it in the long run.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What do you think would be like the best outcome?
Just to be able to communicate effectively and see each other's sides of things and not feel like we're kind of at war against each other, but we're more like a team.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So you're a team. What does that look like for you guys, being a team?
I think it's one of those things where, because we are roommates, just knowing that we can go to each other and share our feelings without having to feel like we are being judged or being like looked down on for them, or having them feel unsympathetic.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, so kind of feeling safe with each other.
Yeah.
Right. So another one of the interventions that we talked about was kind of that circle of control, and kind of discussing and recognizing like what are the things that like I have control over, and what are the things that are outside of my control. So I'm gonna flip my page over, and I'm gonna draw a circle, and inside of our circle is what we have control over, and then outside of it are things that we don't have control over. Okay, so can you guys just name some things and tell me if you're thinking that it's inside of your control or if it's outside of your control?
I think emotions are inside your control.
Okay, tell me about that.
Like you can something can make you feel however, but you can you can kind of work with that and try and, I don't know, make it
kind of take control of your emotions.
Yeah,
even. Like
take
if
control of
something
it.
if something immediate makes you sad, you can think, no, I'm not gonna let it.
yeah.
Yeah. So kind of so maybe your emotions aren't maybe your emotions are like kind of in your control, kind of outside, but it's more of your reactions to your emotions that are
Mhm.
inside of your circle of control.
Yeah.
Yeah. And tell me about that, like your reactions to emotions being something that you can control.
I think of course you can control your reactions to your emotions, and it can be hard, but it's something that I think we're both working on. And yeah, it's just, you can't really control like how exactly you feel, but you can control
How long you feel that way.
how long you feel that way, and like what your reaction to that feeling is, and
Mm-hmm.
how you're gonna go forward.
Right. Yeah. So if I'm feeling really, really angry and I throw this cup down and break it, that would be like a reaction to my emotion, and that's something that's inside of my control.
Yeah.
Whereas like my feeling of anger, that may be something that I don't have total control over, but it's what I do with that anger that's inside my control.
Yeah.
Yeah. So your reactions, what else? What else can you guys think of?
The words you say.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So the words that you say. Yeah, and why is that one an important one for being inside the circle of control?
I mean, because going off the emotion, you could feel like, let's just play off anger. I could feel angry, but that doesn't mean that I have to use my anger and spew hurtful words at Kaylee
Mm-hmm.
or at anybody.
Mm-hmm. So you can feel angry, but it's what you do with that anger that's important. So what about for you, Kaylee? Is how do you, like when thinking about your words, how do you view that? Do you view that as like something that's pretty easily in your control?
I think so. I think it's pretty easy for me to control like what I say, because I like to take time to think about what I say and make sure I have control over what kind of comes out of my mouth.
Right. So it's something that's not super difficult for you, just because you take time to process and think things through. What about for you, Sarah? Is that something that's more difficult or more easy?
I wouldn't say it was difficult. I wouldn't say it was easy. I'm definitely one of those ones that if I become angry, I tend to lose control of my words, and that's when I need to really like take time to process and everything. So it's something that I'm working towards. But I wouldn't call it difficult, just because I understand that that is something that is a part of me, like my personality. So I've been working on taking time to digest information and really sort through how I'm feeling before I communicate with words to people.
Mm-hmm. Right. So it's something that you realize about yourself, and so it's something that you've been trying to kind of like be aware of and
and be really proactive with it.
Right. Yeah. That's awesome. And how does that feel, Kaylee, hearing that she's being proactive with this?
It makes me feel good, just because it makes me feel like we're making progress in all of this, and that she cares about what she's saying and what is going on between us.
Mm-hmm. Right. So it kind of makes you feel cared for and feel important that she's trying this.
Yeah.
So what else, when we talk about like the circle of control, and we've said like you know, reactions, our words, what else is in our circle of control?
Did we say actions
Nope.
already?
Actions.
Actions. That's a good one. So tell me a little bit about actions.
I think, of course, your actions are inside your control. Like, you can kind of feel however you want to feel, but the way you react to something is inside your control.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that kind of goes along with what we talked about with like reactions. Like, you know, I can feel angry, but if I smash this cup on the ground, that's an action or reaction that's inside of my control.
Yeah.
Are there other things that come to mind when thinking of like actions or reactions that are in your control?
None that specifically come to mind.
Yeah, can't think of too many other things.
Yeah. Yeah, and we have a pretty good like, you know, circle of what's in our control. So reactions, your words, actions. Are there some things that are outside of your control? So outside of our circle of control?
Yeah, we can't control how other people respond or how other people act.
Mm-hmm. So we can't control how other people respond, how other people act.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, say you guys are in some sort of disagreement or conflict, and Kaylee pushes you because she's angry, and that's something that's outside of your control because it's something that is, you know, her reaction. Do you guys have any other
Can't control what other people say.
Yeah, so you can't control what other people say.
Can't control. I don't know.
Yeah, that one. Can't control what other people say, can't control what other people do.
Right.
Or think.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I think.
Yeah. And so does that kind of like break it down in a way that's kind of easier to understand? You know, like seeing this circle, seeing what's inside of our control, and then seeing the things that are like outside of our control. So tell me about what comes up like when we just did that. Tell me about what came up for you guys
When we just did the.
when we talked about the circle of control.
I mean, it just makes me think of like how when I do things, I don't know how she's gonna react or how she's gonna feel, but I mean, I can control what I do and how I react and respond to things, but yeah, in the end, I can't really control what how she feels or responds.
Yeah. And Sarah, what about for you? What comes up when?
I'm pretty much the same thing. I mean, it's definitely one of those ones where, I mean, it gives you control in a sense, because I can't control how she responds to things that I bring up to her, but I know that I can control how I respond when I'm bringing things up to her or when she's bringing things up to me.
Yeah.
And then just knowing that she's also working on that, it's just one of those things that's really encouraging.
Yeah,
I'd say.
encouraging.
Just knowing that both of us are kind of taking control of the things that we have control over.
Right. So yeah, it's encouraging knowing that you guys are both kind of like working on this together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And how does it feel kind of like knowing that you guys are kind of like a team and working on these things together?
I mean, I think it feels good just knowing that, you know, we're not alone in this and that we have each other and that we're both working for like a similar goal and we both want to make things, you know, work out and right and yeah, just that we're on the same team.
Right.
Yeah. It's encouraging too because we both know that we're both working on this, we also have that capability of giving each other grace in case we don't always hit the perfect mark or we don't always implement it to the best, just knowing that, and since we both are still learning this, that if we do mess up, we both know that, you know, it wasn't intentional. It's just something that we're both kind of learning together.
Yeah, it's something you guys are both learning, both growing in. And Sarah, you talked about, you know, something that you talked about being able to give each other grace. Can you talk a little bit more about what that's like?
Yeah, I mean, it's just knowing that I know I'm human and I know she's human and we make mistakes, especially if it's something that we're not used to doing. It's not the first thing that we kind of turn to when we are communicating or when we are struggling with our emotions. So just knowing that because we are humans and because we will make mistakes, just knowing that it's okay for her and it's okay for me to make a mistake is just, you know, not trying to hold it against her and be like, oh, well, that one time you didn't use your I statements and you blamed it on me. But then it's the same thing with me. If there was one time where I forgot to use my I statements, like knowing that she wouldn't hold it against me and give me the grace to kind of move past it and all of that.
Yeah, so kind of understanding more about like that mistakes happen and, you know, if things do, you know, if you're not able to implement these things perfectly or you miss the mark or something, you know, being able to give grace and, you know, understand that you're both working towards a common goal. Right. And Kaylee, what about for you? What does, you know, giving grace look like or mean to you?
I think kind of the same thing, just like we're gonna mess up and we're not gonna have the perfect communication, but I think we can both give each other grace and know that we're trying our best and we're not gonna change overnight, but that we can be, we can also be helpful to each other and just cut each other some slack. Right.
Kind of understanding that that these things are a learning process and it's not
it takes time.
Yeah, it's not gonna be a magic wand that fixes everything overnight. That it's a process. So what would you say is kind of like the main thing that sticks out about, you know, this past week, you know, using those interventions?
I mean, I think like I said, like at the beginning of the session, it wasn't perfect, but there were a couple times that we used them and that it was helpful. So I think just having those couple successes stuck out and was encouraging, and like we were saying, to cut each other slack, and not every time we have an issue it's gonna be perfect, but we did have some successes, so
Right. So understanding that, not everything is gonna be perfect, but recognizing and celebrating the successes that you guys do have.
Yeah.
And how do you guys celebrate your guys' successes, or like when you have a good moment or a good, you know, interaction, good communication style, what do you guys usually do? How do you reflect upon that?
I mean, I think it differs, you know, depending on like the situation and the day. I mean, sometimes, you know, after we've had like a good interaction and we can both like see where we're coming from because we've used like those I statements, we then like feel better hanging out in each other's company, whether that be like to go get a coffee together or maybe watch like a little bit of TV together. Whereas like beforehand we'd have a communication session, we'd both get upset with each other and then kind of just retreat into our own spaces.
Right. Yeah, so when you guys are able to communicate successfully or have, you know, have a good, productive conversation, then you feel better about spending time with each other, feel better about hanging out with each other. You said, you know, go and get a coffee or, you know, watch a show together. And then that, you know, that's something that's quality time, and that's, you know, working on your relationship even more, which is great. Yeah. So our last intervention that we had talked about and that I'm gonna ask you guys about is just like the asking questions or clarifying. So if the other person is saying something, you know, and you need clarity or you're not understanding, being able to ask questions and get that clarity. So was that something that you guys found beneficial this past week?
I would say so. I mean, just because I know we've also had kind of like an issue with the cleaning schedule, just because Kaylee will kind of want the house cleaned on a more kind of consistent basis, whereas I'm kind of one where it's more like, well, when it needs to be clean, that's when we can clean it. And I actually kind of like this week took the time to ask her like why she felt like the house needed to be cleaned. And she just let me know that she could see our dog's like paw prints on the floor when it caught the light. And I mean, I hadn't even noticed that because I never noticed that and I didn't see that, but then because I had asked her, it then made me more
aware
of the fact that she saw dirt that I didn't, so then it did need to be cleaned.
Yeah.
You know, and it just made me more understanding to why she wanted the house cleaned.
Right.
Consistently.
Right. It kind of helped you have that understanding for, you know, why she wanted it cleaned.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I'm glad that you guys were able to like have that productive conversation, and that you were able to like ask questions and get clarity on things that you know wanted to explore more of. And how was that for you, Kaylee? You know, seeing that she was, you know, asking questions and wanting clarity.
I appreciated it because it made me feel like she wanted to understand where I was coming from, and so we were able to kind of, I feel like, see each other's side more because things were more clear. Our communication was clear because we were asking questions.
Right. So asking questions and getting that clarity, it helps you kind of see each other's side more. Yeah. So was there any time or any moment that you you know, asked questions or got clarity from Sarah on something?
I think I asked her to do the dishes on, I think, Friday night, and she was gonna go out with her friends that night, so she asked for clarity if like I needed it done in that moment or if she could wait till the morning to do it. And so I just kind of was like, oh yeah, it's fine if you do it in the morning. I just kind of wanted it done like before, you know, at some point during the weekend.
Right.
So yeah, she asked for clarity, and I kind of,
you were able to provide that clarity.
yeah.
So yeah, so she was able to ask for clarity. You were able to provide that clarity,
Mm-hmm.
and then that helped for a more like productive conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So if she hadn't have asked for clarity, what do you think might have happened?
I think maybe she wouldn't have cleaned the kitchen, and then I would have gotten upset, and then maybe she wouldn't have understood why I was upset, and then it might have not have gotten done, and then just kind of could have blown up.
Right. So you were kind of able to see see the benefit of why getting that clarity was helpful.
Yeah.
So Sarah, how does that feel, like hearing Kaylee say, you know, that you did a good job of asking for clarity and that it was helpful?
I mean, it makes me feel good just because then I know that she sees that I am trying. And it makes me feel glad because then I know that she's not getting mad at me, which then results in me getting mad at her. So it just makes me feel good to hear and see that she understands and she sees that I'm trying.
Right. Yeah. So you guys are both able to kind of like see from the other's point of view and, you know, kind of hold that understanding for yourself and one another. Yeah. So what do you think, like going forward this next week, what's going to be something that that you think will be the most helpful from these 4 interventions that we discussed?
I think still the asking questions and the I statements are my favorite.
Right. So asking questions, getting that clarity, and then also doing the I statements. Why are those important to you?
I think they just help us communicate the best and see each other's perspective and just communicate clearly.
And Sarah, what about for you?
I mean, I definitely like the clarifying questions, but I think the I statements are my favorite just because then I know when Kaylee uses them, it really makes me feel like she's not laying blame at my feet and she's just telling me how my actions made her feel, which then makes me more receptive to listening to what she has to say. And I mean, I'm sure it's the same way for her when I say that, use the I statements, it doesn't make her feel like I'm blaming everything on her. So I like the clarifying questions, but I'd say the I statements were my favorite.
Okay. So the I statements were your favorite, but you also like the clarifying questions. Right. And then the circle of control and the reflecting feelings, were those kind of the 2 least helpful for you guys in those 4?
I don't know if I'd use least helpful. I would just say that they're not the ones that we gravitate towards the most yet.
I like the reflective feelings, but yeah, we just tend to use the other 2 more.
Right, those feel more like natural to you guys, or feel more comfortable doing those. Yeah.
I think they're easier as well. Just because I mean the circle of control is one. For me, I know it helps when I am starting to get frustrated or angry or stuck in my emotions. That's one that helps me kind of when I'm gravitating towards that, to just kind of help me recenter myself and like understand like I need to control what I can control. And then I mean just the restating feelings. I mean that's just one that
reflecting feelings.
Yeah, reflecting feelings. I'm just not super used to it yet because we still are working on sharing our feelings. So I just say I gravitate the most towards the like I statements.
Right. Yeah. And the I statements, that's a really important one too, because kind of like we talked about at the beginning, when you're using those I statements, it's kind of it's not putting blame on the other person, which can cause a lot of conflict or a lot of distress. And so you're really saying like, I feel like, and kind of taking ownership instead of placing it on somebody else. Yeah. So as we kind of end today, Can you guys tell me what are the things that stood out to you the most about what we talked about?
I think just hearing that we're both kind of happy with the progress that we've made with
Mm-hmm.
the tools that you've given us, and that we're both wanting the same end goal, and that we're both we know it's not going to happen overnight, but we're still making progress and doing well.
Yeah. So you both have the same end goal. We kind of talked a little bit about that, but what would be your end goal?
Just to be able to communicate effectively and kind of live together peacefully, and when we do get mad at each other, be able to kind of explain what's going on and not get into like a big blowout fight, but be able to like resolve it and just use the tools you've given us to understand where the other person's coming from, and kind of just mend things.
Right. Okay. And Sarah, what about for you? What's kind of the main thing that stuck out to you about what we went over and what we talked about today?
I mean, I think it's the same, just knowing that we both are trying, knowing that we both share similar views on like just those uncomfortable feeling or uncomfortableness of sharing our feelings, and then just knowing that we both understand that this is new to us, so that we both can have that kind of grace for each other, are what stood out to me the most.
Right. Yeah. So again, you mentioned just that grace, and having, understanding and having grace for one another in this time of like learning something new, learning new tools,